Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Tanner's Favorite Things. I'm Tanner Knight, and today we've got a little Telecaster here for you. This is in fact a Squier Telecaster made in China, and if you remember, I believe it was this past summer, maybe 2 summers ago now, I reliced this thing, and I beat the hell out of it. And you can tell that it has seen some wear, and all of that was put on by me pretty much, except for one little gouge here, which we covered in that video. If you want to check it out, I'll link it below. However, I was never, I did like the relicing job on this. I'm not going to say I didn't like it, but my mom ended up laughing at it. She thought it looked stupid. It's this poly finish. I'm going to go ahead and say it. It's not the greatest finish. So we're going to address this guitar once again and finally make it look, I don't know, semi-cool, hopefully. It's going to be vintage inspired, but we're going to go ahead and strip all of this poly finish off of here and upgrade the hardware. I got new pickups, Fender Custom Shop, and Fender Custom Shop potentiometers and switch. It's a 4-way switch instead of a 3-way switch. So all of that will be upgraded. Stay tuned. Let's go ahead and dig right in. All right, so we will start by loosening the strings on this guitar. This is probably a 2020 something Fender or Squier, not actual Fender, but it is a Fender licensed body. But the Squier line is their budget-friendly version of guitars. So you'll find the Telecaster, the Stratocaster, the Jazz Bass. All of the standard models of Fender are available by Squier and at a much lower price point. And some people might ask, well, if you can get this guitar for $300 or $400, I don't know the exact MSRP, why would you bother spending more than that? Because in all reality, this is a great guitar. It plays very, very well. And I'll link a playing demo just of the original hardware as it is before I swap it out here and let you hear what it sounds like before. But it's a very, very passable Telecaster guitar with no real issues whatsoever play-wise. Very nice action, and the pickups are quiet and they sound very good, very Telecaster-like. So no complaints about this guitar other than, I guess, the poly finish, which makes it look kind of janky when reliced. So a little bit about relicing. The notion kind of started probably in the 80s, maybe as early as the 70s, but most of the time people weren't looking for used instruments. They were just looking for good instruments. And the idea of, a vintage guitar becoming more desirable and requiring a higher price tag influenced the market so that people decided, oh, well, I can just take a brand new guitar, make it look old, and sell it for a premium. And Gibson has done that. Fender has done that in their custom shop. I believe they have a relic division. I think Gibson's most famous for it with their Murphy Labs, but, everybody has a relic guitar division nowadays because the vintage look is so in all cases. This was a dumb way to do this. All right, strings are off. Next comes the body. Pretty much every guitar, especially Fender guitars, can be disassembled with a simple Phillips head screwdriver, and that's exactly what I'm using here. Just a Phillips head screwdriver to remove these 4 bolts, and that will remove the neck from the body. This neck is still pretty new looking, feeling, etc. And I don't necessarily have any notion to relic the neck. I think that you really risk affecting playability if you ding up the neck or put any marks in there that you might regret later. So I'm leaving the neck to be worn just naturally. And so far, after a couple years of just playing, it's really nicely smoothed up the neck. And I think it looks like it's been played now, even though it looks much newer than the body. All right, there's our Squier neck plate. Now this neck should slide right out of here, and it does. So, like I said, here is that neck Kind of nice looking, shiny. It says this on the bottom. Looks like 2020 maybe, has the date code. But just a really nice neck. No problems with this guy here, so it goes right back on the guitar once it's finished. But from here, we need to basically strip everything off of this body so that it is naked, because we're then going to take all of the poly finish off. So let's start here, take the strap button off here, and continue around the guitar. So this is the switch plate that holds the potentiometers and switch. Let's see the replacement components real quick. All right, so this is the unit. I have to wire it into the plate, obviously, but there's the jack. We have two CTS 250K pots. Not sure if you can make that out, but you'll have to take my word for it. An orange drop capacitor and this cool switch right here. So I do believe this is a Fender USA harness or whatever, but again, to compare it against this, cheap China stuff. These pots are actually really nice, so I don't have any issues with them. They're also 250K pots, but they are made in China, but they spin really nice. No problems with them, but we're gonna swap them anyway. All right, here's our bridge pickup. This is just a magnet. It's a regular old magnet. And again, I'll have to mount the other pickups in the bridge, but let me show you the other pickup that we have for this. So here's our bridge pickup. It does have the Fender Custom Shop insignia on it, and it is black and yellow wiring. You know, pretty similar looking from all, you know, outward appearances, except for, you know, it's very, very differently magneted. And then finally, our neck pickup is very similar, just a magnet, but it does have that lipstick style pickup, which is characteristic of a Tele. Our replacement pickup is this one here, which doesn't have any insignia on it, but it is the matching neck pickup from that custom shop one that we saw a second ago. Okay, the final two things to remove are the jack plate, which will also get replaced, but probably nothing to worry about there most of the time. And then this ground wire, which comes right out and needs to be set aside. That one interfaces with the bridge through this hole and grounds all of the electronics of this guitar. But that's where we wanted to get to. Didn't take too long. We have these metal ferrules in the back. I'm going to try to work around them instead of take them out and replace them. But we are going to try to get all of this poly finish off of here. And in fact, I'm going to stay right here on the back. You can see this part right here. I put the heat gun pretty heavy on that little section when I first started this relicing process. That was kind of an experiment. It looks kind of weird, it kind of fried it. So I'm gonna try a different technique. I blasted this, and I'm gonna try to just like go a little bit slower and see if we can get large swaths with the heat gun to come off at a time. I'll be using my Ryobi heat gun today, and if you're concerned about ventilation, don't worry. We got things as ventilated as they possibly can be. Just gonna crank it all the way up to, 1,000 degrees. And let's see what we get. All right, let's test that out. I'll try to scrape some of this away. Not quite what I was expecting. So, this is pretty slow going. That's where I've got to, and boy is this filthy. I think I'm gonna need to grab a vacuum here to stay just a little bit clean here, but let me see if I can do that.
1 hour later.
Well, that was tedious as hell. I spent about the last hour outside because it was way too dirty to keep doing this inside. Heating and scraping, heating and scraping, heating and scraping. And yeah, I did the back first, which I'm glad because I learned some things. Took up a little bit of wood there, but that's no worry because again, this is gonna have a relic look to it. You can see all these burn marks, some of which will stick around after I sand it. So the next stage is I'm going to sand this with probably, I don't know, 240 and then maybe a 400 to finish it up. And then I'm going to apply some Tung oil, which is my favorite oil for applying to instruments. The Tung oil makes it a little darker, a little richer, and provides a pretty hard coating that is not polyurethane, obviously, but it's a little harder than, say, nitrocellulose. So that's what we've got here. So let's do the once over on this guitar. The hardest part is this pocket here, which I got almost everything out, but a little bit of that is left over. Most of it's gone though. I'm gonna hit this with a sander though, so that's gonna probably clean that up. Again, if it doesn't, that's not the end of the world. I like a little bit of variation here on the surface, and I hope that some of these burn marks and some of the holes and beater marks that were put in here from the original relicing, I hope they still shine through. I think they will. So I'm not gonna clean this up too much with the sander, but here is this body. Interestingly enough, I count 3 pieces of what I assume is, I don't know, pine or spruce or something. But this is a piece here with a seam roughly there. And then the other piece is here, this very bottom little section here, which you can see a little bit clearer on the back here and here. But, you know, a 3-piece body from Squier is not really out of the norm. If anything, I think you can expect to see 4, maybe 5-piece bodies, depending on the day and the wood stock. But for the most part, they stick them to 3-piece, and they're not meant to be pretty when they're covered in a paint. This one was covered in that butterscotch paint. You know, that's typically a look that's achieved through a tinted lacquer, and again, it was a polyurethane paint, similar to just their black or red. That you can't see the wood grain through, or not supposed to see the wood grain through. So that's what we've got here. Let's go ahead and sand this bowie down and get with the application of the Tung oil. All right, that was quick and dirty. We hit it with a 220 and then I found 320 instead of a 400, but now I'm just gonna wipe it down, get any sawdust off of this with a semi-wet or damp rag here. Not trying to introduce any moisture into the wood before applying the Tung oil, but I do just want to wipe this down real quick. Okay, I'll let this dry for just 1 minute, and then we will apply the Tung oil, which I've got this Watco Tung oil, just picked it up today, so should be fairly nice. So once this surface gets a little bit drier, I'll apply the first layer of Tung oil. One of, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 that I'm gonna go on this. I don't wanna go crazy, but I do think the more layers, the better. And this wood is very, very pale, so it's not sexy, or it's just not a beautiful wood. And of course, the Squier is never really meant to be that, so, you know, it is what it is, and that's why we're doing this. This is more of an experiment than anything else, and I think it's going to turn out at least better than it looked with that crappy poly finish, but you never know. So, all right, I think that's enough time. I have a handy dandy rag here. Let's go ahead and apply our first bit of Tung oil to this surface, see what it looks like. Well, not very dark at all. All right, I think that's pretty even. We're going to let that sit for about an hour. Then I'll come back and apply a second coat. I don't think I'll need to knock it back. That's kind of one of the application methods that I've been gravitating towards recently, is to come back and apply a fresh coat, not quite while it's wet, but a little after it's dried. So I'm going to try that again and see if I can apply a couple, maybe 3 coats before I hit it again with some 320 grit to knock that back. And then we'll keep going and see what that's going to be like. But for now, that's coat 1. So one of probably many. The other thing that I debated about doing with this is actually getting a stained finish, one that applied a little bit of darkness to it, and I'm kind of regretting not going that route. I remember the Tung oil putting a bit more color to maple, which is this is supposed to be, but it's probably pine or something else. But either way, it's the color of maple, and Tung oil on maple darkens it up quite a bit, but not this thing. So I think maybe a few more layers will have to come, but we will see how it goes. Touch back in a few. All right, after the 4th coat, I hit this with 400 grit sandpaper, and it's ready for another 4 to 5 coats. I'm gonna kind of go crazy on this and put a lot of coats on here, just because I think that this is not the best application method. I have a pillowcase here, but also I think that the Tung oil just needs a bit more application than a lot of other types of finishes. So let's go ahead and apply coat number 5. All right, so I'm at 8 coats with another sanding of 400 grit, and it's pretty dang good. I would probably be okay leaving it as is, but I'm kind of a glutton for punishment. So let's go ahead and add 2 more layers and make this a true 10 coat type of finish. And I think with the 10 coats, it's just going to give me a little more room, a little more finish to dig into with the sandpaper on its final sand, because I'm seeing some spots that are still a little bit duller than others, and I think that if I add that extra 2 coats after the 8th and sand, then we should be good. So here we go, coat number 9. All right, 10 coats in, a few sands, and I did buff it up with some The One polisher, which is what I use on all of my lacquered drums and guitars. But this is, it's not what I would call 100% perfect, but I don't think it was ever going to be, because if you recall, it had a bunch of relic indentations and markings, which have been preserved very nicely under the top coat of Tung oil. And I think that it looks really good. And if you especially get a little further away, looks even better. But we're not quite done. The last thing I want to do to treat this wood is a Howard's Feed and Wax wood polish and conditioner. This is just a quick conditioner that you leave on for 15 minutes, or I'm probably going to do a half an hour just to get maximum absorption. And then it has a little silicate or something in there to polish things up. So it should condition as well as darken ever so slightly, I'm hoping. We could use a few more shades darker on this wood, so hopefully that will do that. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, I'm just going to apply this fairly liberally. And that might be enough for the whole guitar, but we'll see. At least the back and sides have this microfiber cloth just to work it in. Yeah, it looks like I've got quite a bit excess. Maybe that was a bit too liberal, but that's okay. Get this whole guitar. Okay. Maybe a little more on this top. All right, that was relatively easy. Now I'll wait for this to just kind of do its thing. Like I said, about a half an hour, and then I'll come wipe it off, and we should be ready to assemble. All right, let's wipe this guy down, starting again with the back. Looking pretty good. Well, a little slippery still with my hands, but I'd say she looks pretty dang good. So, that's the body. Let's put this thing together with the custom shop components now. Alright, so luckily this set of pickups shipped with this handy dandy little guide. So I'm just going to follow this real well here and start with our neck pickup, which our black goes to this one right here. So let me get a little solder ready. Okay, one down. White goes all the way up here. Let me see if there's any solder on here to reflow. Okay, that one feels pretty good. Next, black bridge just goes to the middle pot somewhere. So let me try to make that so it's not interfering with anything over here. Oh shit, this one's wrong. This one needs to go over here. And it's the other white one that needs to go over there. And this one lives over here. Okay, I believe that's it for the soldering part. The final connection to make is this wire, which is the ground, which goes underneath. Okay, I'm pretty sure we are good to test some things here. So let me just plug in this guitar into an amp. Yeah, that did something. This one, not so much. Definitely sounds like we're getting volume on that one. Not sure about this one. I'll just take a quick look. Doesn't sound like we're getting any sound. Well, let's throw caution to the winds, folks, and screw this thing back together and see if we are on the right track here. Because I think I was getting sound out of here. It's just really quiet, which is probably good. So let me orient these cables a little bit better. And then we'll tuck all of this stuff away to be screwed down. think this switch is a little taller than the other one too, so that's potentially interfacing with the back of there, but I think we have enough room there. So, okay, let's go ahead and put this thing back together. I gotta say, I did not see the need to replace this bridge because the Squier bridge is actually really nice. A very thick chunk of metal, 4 screws. It's not like your standard ash tray or ash can, whatever they call that old style that they used to be, but pretty nice. FYI, I did have to do a little bit of metal work to make this existing Squier metal plate work. I did not get the electronics shipped with the corresponding plate because I had this one and I thought it would be okay. And for the most part, it is, except for the Squier pots and the switch itself have smaller components. So the screw holes for the switch needed to be bored out just a bit, and the holes for the potentiometers needed to be bored out just a tad, just because the Squier components are slightly, I guess, smaller. The other thing I had to do to make this work was this hole here for the neck pickup is also slightly narrower than the full width of this exact same looking size pickup. So I had to do a little bit of grinding on the outside of each of these little curves here just to make a little more room for that pickup. And it's pretty tight right now as is. I didn't want to take any more material away because those screws don't have much plastic in between them and the slot, so had to be that way. Okay, that looks like that's flat. Last set of screws, and we should be good. All right, that's every screw except for the neck. Let's do our little test again. Seems a little less sound coming out now that it's back together. Let's put some strings on it and see what's up. Going with this D'Addario set of strings, so let's go ahead, put one on there and see if we get any sound. No sound. God damn it. All right, I think I figured out the ground issue. The ground wire that came installed on this potentiometer had to go to the neck pickup, not the bridge. So I reinstalled the bridge ground that came with the original wiring, but should be all good now. Let me fire it on. All right, we should be good. Let's string this bad boy up. All right, so here we are with this guitar fully assembled or reassembled with the new pickups and everything back together. And from what I can tell, everything works almost perfectly because I get a hum when I'm 100% on this setting over here. So there might be some sort of ground issue with the full neck pickup setting, but I'm not going to worry about it for now, and you'll see why. But let's go ahead and take a closer look at the guitar now that it's fully assembled. You can see, maybe it's a little bright here. Let me bump this down. So it looks, I don't know. I don't want to call this maple because I don't think it is. I should look at what the Squier website actually calls these guitars as far as tone woods. But it might be a pine of sorts, but it no longer has any poly finish on it. It's 100% stripped down to its bare wood and treated with 10 layers of tung oil, sanded a few times, and then with that finishing Howard's polishing wax. So I think it came out really good. It has a lot of evidence from the previous relicing job that I did, little dings and little burns here and there that to me add character because it is such a bright white finish of a guitar that did not get too much darker as I applied more and more tung oil. But that tung oil actually does say that it won't darken, so I guess I should have expected that. But it's not what I'd call the most perfect finish in that, you know, the relicing that existed previously created some inconsistencies in the wood itself. So those obviously get filled and have a different texture to what was sanded and buffed out. So I like it. It's pretty nice to feel, actually much nicer than it was with the poly on it. And it still maintains that mojo. The good news is that the pickups sound great. The not so great news is that these potentiometers are bigger, or at least the shaft is bigger than the previous one. So the knobs that came with the Squier Telly will not fit on these, so I'll have to acquire some new knobs. Beyond that, not terribly hard to do. I did have to do a little bit of metal work in order to accommodate the pots and the screws for the switch and the output jack, but if you have a drill, just like a standard battery powered drill, 18, 15 volt, whatever, should do the trick as far as boring that out with the appropriate bit. The bridge, rock solid, looks great. And the pickup guard itself didn't have to do anything to, so, well, that's not true. I had to shave just a hair out of the curvature of the hole of that slot. So I think it turned out great. Let's go ahead and hear what it sounds like. All right, so here we are with the guitar plugged into this Marshall 1987X Plexi head, a 50-watt head that is being plugged into this orange 2x12 PPC 212 cabinet. And that one is filled with Celestian creambacks, so a really familiar sound, one can say. But let's just hear what this guitar sounds like first. We're in the bridge pickup, and sounds like a Telecaster, very similar to what you might expect. But let's go ahead and just hear what it sounds like without any hands on it. I don't know if you can pick up on that, but there's a slight amount of noise that's in there that gets kind of omitted once I ground it with my finger. So to me, there's a tiny, tiny grounding issue somewhere in here. I think maybe some of the grounds are bleeding into something that shouldn't be grounded, but I'm not entirely sure on that. I'll have to kind of troubleshoot that. But for the most part, it's acceptable. This is a Squier Telecaster, so I'm not really going for like the most quiet recording studio guitar that I have. I mostly play this upstairs just for kind of practice and fun without any kind of interest in recording it. That's not to say that it can't be recorded. I'm sure it would record just fine, but the tuners are probably the next thing to go. They are not the best tuners, so let me throw another quick tune on here. These are brand new strings as well. I didn't go with the original strings that I had on here because they were kind of worked. So there's also some compliance left in these strings, so excuse any out of tune playing that happens. I'm trying to keep it as tuned as possible. So that's with the tone all the way off, or open as I like to call it. If I engage the tone, then it gets a lot more muffled. Pretty subtle, actually. Pretty subtle, but that's 100% open and 100% closed, or full tone. I'm not entirely sure what pickup selection happens with a 4-way switch versus a 3-way switch, but keep in mind, this is a 4-way switch off of these Fender Custom Shop electronics. So right now, I assume that's 100% in the bridge. I assume that position 2 is maybe a combination of the two, a middle, and then position 3 might be, I don't know, just the neck. I'm not sure. I don't know. So I'll have to look that up. But for the moment, let's just hear what it sounds like as I switch through. Not too much noise. Position 3. Position 4 is a little bit louder with the noise. So that's what I was saying. The grounding issue is most apparent in that position 4. It's still pretty minimal as grounding goes for guitars, but you can tell that when I do ground my fingers on the strings, the noise goes away entirely, and that means that the electronics are not properly grounded. But anyway, let's hear what this thing sounds like in a couple full modes. So here we go. All the way open, volume, bridge. Really nice in that one position, which again I assume is full bridge. But let's go ahead and hear position 2 and just keep everything as is. So position 2 sounds really good. Here's position 3. Very nice. Finally, position 4. Really nice usable tones too, and an acceptable amount of noise when I take my fingers off the strings, but still a nominal amount of noise. So I'll just keep my fingers on the strings for now. I think that neck might be a little hotter because it is closer to the strings. I cranked it up kind of high just to get some good output out of it, but I think there can be maybe a little more room to bring the bridge pickup up as well. Might address that separately, but in any regard, let's hear what this thing sounds like with a little dirt. Let's go right to the JHS Nauticlon and hear some serious gain. It's got a little more noise in there when I take my fingers off with the Nauticlon, but keep in mind these are single coil pickups, so they are kind of, you know, they are going to have some hum. That's part of the equation, but we can add a little dirt and manage it as such. Sounds great. That pickup takes the Nauticlon very well, way better than most single coil pickups. Just for kicks, let's hear the neck pickup with the Nauticlon. Typically not my favorite combination with a Telecaster, just because I feel like the neck pickup needs something a little less gainy, but let's try it. Wow, that sounds a lot more like a P90 to me than a standard Telecaster bridge pick or neck pickup. So that's kind of surprising and really exciting. I love that sound. Again, I don't typically overdrive the neck pickup on a Tele, but that's pretty dang compelling right there. Speaking of things you don't usually do on a Telecaster, I like to test the metal zone with all high gain situations. So let's see what this thing can do with the metal zone and see if it can tame that pedal. I don't really have too many concerns after that Nauticlon. Pretty similar levels of gain, just different EQ. Let's give it a shot. I don't know, it's not terrible. I've heard worse combinations, certainly worse Fender guitar combinations with the metal zone, but that's pretty respectable. So take that for what it's worth. What are my final thoughts on this project as a project? Of course, it's not worth the time that I put into it. I have several hours of work in here, probably 10 just on this round alone of sanding, stripping, applying, sanding, treating, blah, 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 and reassembling. There was a whole hard situation of getting these electronics to sound like they do. But overall, I'm really happy with the outcome and the end result. I find that the guitar looks a ton better now that it doesn't have any of that poly finish on it, which was, again, trying to mimic a butterscotch finish, which is typically done with tint and a lacquer. But in the case of the Squier Telecaster, probably and Stratocaster and other items as well of that color, it's just a poly paint that's colored butterscotch to make it look like that. So it had to go. And in its place, 10 layers of tung oil and 1 layer of that wax. And it feels great. That's, I think, the best part of it is that it feels like wood again. And it feels like a Telecaster. And I think that the custom shop pickups definitely are not worth the upgrade in that it costs, I don't know, maybe $250 or $300 for the whole set of pickups and wiring. This guitar is probably worth less than $300 without that. So it's kind of like, why? But you know, I had the idea, I wanted to do it, and I think the outcome is good, and I'm not gonna cry about it. So I think that I can play this guitar without any concerns now, it'll continue to be my upstairs kind of mess around guitar, and hopefully over the years it will continue to acquire its own honest playwear and get some spots that wear naturally. So I'll have another video maybe in a couple years after I've just played it and let it live as is for a while. But for now, that's what I wanted to do is just that, and I hope that you've enjoyed the process. So let me know if you have any questions or if you have any requests. I don't know if I'll be able to accommodate any at this point, but if you have any specific requests, let me know and I'll see what I can do. Otherwise, always like and subscribe. That helps me out a ton. So thank you, and I hope to see you on the next one.